And so to your point, Facebook was obviously a source of community for young folks. And it's now a source of community for folks over 50. So the largest demographic is on Facebook right now is over 60. And so I tell a lot of my friends, the one thing you need to be doing is thinking about your life 5 to 10 years from now and whether or not what you're doing now is going to support you as you get older.
Welcome everyone to another episode of Your Lab Central. Today I'm joined with Laura. Laura, would you like to tell our audience why they should be excited about our conversation?
Well, I think the work that I do in dealing with folks over 50, there's a lot of opportunity given that we're one of the largest growing demographics in the world. And we have so much opportunity. And I think it's a really great time to be growing older, and not only in the United States, but worldwide. And the work that I do really showcases that.
Let's talk about it. The journey post 50 is something I know how much people talk about because I'm barely halfway. I mean, I've crossed halfway, so I still have a long way to go. But then, how are you helping people? What's the mindset shift that you're creating?
Well, it's interesting. I grew up on Wall Street, so I grew up in financial services, and then decided to get into healthcare. So I owned a couple of home care companies, and I saw in that work folks that had a great plan and executed that plan and lived very, very well as a result. And I'm talking, about several areas of aging well. It's staying in your home safely. It's maintaining your health, going to the doctors when you should, in terms of screening. And and so what I saw was those that did it well, we should educate those that may not know all of the steps that we need to be thinking about. We're living longer than ever before. I mean, we have incredible opportunity to live. I'm on my third career, and so for me, I'm 60 years old, and I feel as though I have more insight into how to age well than I did when I was in my 40s and 30s. So, but a lot of people don't understand that to really age well, you should have a plan. You should really
Right.
we think about retirement. We think about, how do we plan for our weddings? How do I plan for college? How do I plan for major events? Yet we sort of take aging as it comes. And when I saw people with a plan in place, thinking about how to keep their homes safe, how to stay socially active, how to make sure that they've got goals as they get older, I thought, you know what? I think I should be that voice for those that are aging, because at the end of the day, I think that I have a lot to offer in terms of best practices.
To the audience that I have, we've got quite a mix. Now, the first thing that probably comes to mind for a working professional when they're talking about going older or aging and then getting to retirement is probably financial stability and looking at how they're going to be post-retirement. And probably the next thing that comes in is health. Where do you start with people? Is it
Well, the
first?
first thing we do, we sit down and we talk about what are your goals. I think a lot of people as they start to approach, and I basically work with two different groups. I work with folks that are approaching retirement, maybe they're in retirement, and also their loved ones. So, sons and daughters and friends who are saying, I'm supporting my loved one and I'm not really sure how to approach certain conversations. So there's an opportunity to coach that group of folks on how to approach their loved ones on topics like aging well. Um, Before there's a crisis, quite frankly, because it's an easier conversation to talk to somebody that you love about sensitive topics and potentially putting changes in place before there's a crisis. So,
Yeah.
how I approach people that are approaching aging or approaching retirement is, you know, do you have any goals? I mean, I can't tell you how many folks retire and then realize, my goodness, it's not what I thought it was going to be. I mean, it was fun to sleep in for a couple of weeks. I thought it would be fun to be able
Yeah.
to go on a couple of trips, but then the next thing you know, they don't have a purpose
Mhm.
and they feel as though they're a little bit lost. So we
Yeah.
approach retirement as an opportunity to put in place life goals that they may not have been thinking about.
Mhm.
So, what is important to you? What are your values? Um, and then we do an assessment. We talk to our clients about where are you right now. So if you
Yeah.
want to live in that two-story home, is it going to be safe as you get older? And what changes can you put in place in that home so that as you get older, you can stay in that home? And quite frankly, I'm a big fan of staying in your home versus going into some sort of assisted living or whatever. The
Yeah.
next is, when we were younger, do you remember when we were in school and we made friends really easily? We went to
Yeah.
college, we made friends really easily. We had kids of our own and we made friends really easily. Well, unfortunately, as we get older, that social network sometimes begins to change and we don't have those skills to make the friends we used to have. And so it's really important that you dust those skills off and you stay connected in your neighborhood, in your community, even if it means, having to be a little uncomfortable at first. Going out and making new friends is never easy. But if you remember when you're young, just think of it as when you were young. You have to
Yeah.
have those friends because there's lots of science out there that says those that live well are the ones that are most connected with a purpose. There's an old saying, someone to love, something to do, and something to look forward to. And so the work that I do is really making sure you bring forth a plan in order to execute on that.
Now, I have two different questions that I want to ask. One is purpose and the other is social life. So let's talk about purpose first, right? So the general public, the working professional, right? They've been working and they have a certain set of goals and until retirement, they have that they want to achieve so and so. But most people don't make a plan, right? As you mentioned, most people don't have anything post-retirement that they want to look forward to. But usually, young people have created a purpose that, yeah, I want to achieve this in life. Do you try to connect the same purpose post retirement, or is it that you see people have a different purpose in life once they reach retirement?
Well, it's interesting. Some people have a passion their whole life and
Mm.
they don't see that changing, but a lot of folks uh, take an opportunity to kind of take a step back and say, you know what, I've really always wanted to do this or this or this. And guess what? Sometimes you have to change even after you try that.
Yeah.
So again, I think it's really understanding, is there anything in your life that you haven't done yet or that you haven't done enough of yet that you think you want to investigate? And you're always becoming, no matter what age you are, it doesn't matter. And I think reminding people that, you know, in your 40s, 50s, 60s, pre retirement, post retirement, there's opportunities to
Mm.
redefine who you are. As I said, this is my third career. I started off in Wall Street, thought financial services would be my life,
Yeah.
then moved into healthcare and did that for many, many, many years. And now I'm working with clients more in a wellness capacity.
Mm.
And I don't see myself stopping. But at the same time, what was important to me is I wanted flexibility. I didn't want to have to be
Right.
tethered to an office, 60, 70 hours a week. I wanted to be able to come and go. And at first, it was a little bit of a new habit for me
Mhm.
because I wasn't used to having that flexibility and I had to get used to filling my time effectively while still getting
Yeah.
my goals achieved. So though that's the kind of work that I do with clients is, who do you want to be as you grow older? Is it the same that you were in your 40s or do you want to evolve into somebody different? How do you get there? Um, Another thing I wanted to stress, I know you had touched on it earlier, is your health. So a lot of folks that I begin working with, maybe they have worked out their whole life. Maybe they have, maybe they're, crazy 7 day a week
Mm.
people that work out. Maybe they only work out a few days a week, or perhaps not at all. So the first thing I start with is a conversation around what does your exercise plan look like? What does your nutrition plan look like?
Mhm.
Because I don't think people realize that your body changes as you get older. And some of the things that you did to keep yourself strong when you were younger needs to evolve, especially for women, where your bones need more. You need to be lifting weights. The aerobics that you did in your 30s and 40s and 50s, you now need to move towards, heavy weight training. And guess what? You can actually do and lift heavy weights even with arthritis. So some people say, "Oh, I can't lift weights with arthritis." There's ways to do weightlifting to keep your bones strong, keep your body strong while having, certain chronic issues. So health is a very important part of this whole recipe for success as you age.
Yeah.
And it's definitely front and center.
Now, the other part, right? Creating the social life in the community. And you rightly said that health is closely linked to having a social life because you have people surrounding you. The positive aura creates a better life, a better mindset. Now, the social life
Absolutely.
that we have, uh, uh, are people more inclined to going out? Are more people inclined to going online? What are you seeing these days?
Well, it's interesting. There's a lot of women's groups
Mm.
being that are sprouting up, which I think is pretty cool. And a lot of that, uh, there's a balance between, online events, whether they're little craft events or cocktail events or
Yeah.
social events. Book clubs are online, which is pretty cool. But there's not a lot for men, which um, I think there's a huge opportunity for men to begin to collaborate like women have. But what I have seen is these groups are online. They sprout up online, and then you have in-person meetings. You
Mhm.
have travel opportunities to travel with groups of women or travel as couples with your partner.
Mhm.
But again, as you get older, sometimes your relationship status has changed, and it's scary to go out on your own.
Mhm.
And so, what I love about these groups that have sprouted up, and there's so many of them. There's one here in the United States in Massachusetts. 16,000 women have joined online
Right.
and in Massachusetts. And that tells you what a huge need for women to um, see each other, talk to each other, find collaboration with each other. But I often see women online, commenting, "I'm shy. I don't necessarily feel comfortable going out before I know somebody." And so somebody will reach out and say, "Let me reach out to you online one on one. Let me meet you one on one, and then together we'll go to this event." I think that's awesome.
Yeah.
So the good news is there's so many of us that are aging, and the needs that I'm talking about today, there's somebody addressing them. And I think that it's very, very helpful for those of us who, as I said, our network or maybe our families
Mhm.
have become, so many of us are experiencing death in our families, so we don't necessarily have all the people we used to rely on. Um, but again, it's a way for us to stay connected. And I remind everybody, you have to stay connected. Staying in your house by yourself, it's not a good way to live.
Now, how is social media helping out in this? Now, Facebook is something that people, the previous generation used to use. Obviously, the younger generation doesn't use Facebook as much.
That's
Uh,
right. That's right.
yeah. So, how are Facebook groups, like you mentioned, right? There are welfare groups, activity groups that are sprouting. Now, there's value to be created when we're going online. There's an opportunity for people to come up with something like this. But have you seen people actually going back to, say, Facebook after getting old, after aging? Uh,
Oh, absolutely. And so to your point, Facebook was obviously a source of community for young folks. And um, it's now a source of community for folks over 50. So the largest demographic is on Facebook right now is over 60. And so for me, perfect because my business, silversavvy.com,
yeah,
I'm able to communicate to my demographic and my preferred community
yeah.
easily through Facebook. And and it's kind of cool. And a lot. I think there's, I do a talk about the assumptions around folks that are getting older, and one of the things you should never overlook the fact that we are those of us over 50 are technologically savvy. We are COVID really put us there. We
Yeah.
had to learn how to get online for doctor's appointments. We had to learn to connect with our loved ones online. So it's not the same anymore where people think, we don't know how to use cell phones and we don't know how to get onto Facebook. That's not true anymore. So it's really a place for, say, my business
Mhm.
to reach out to the demographic online through Facebook, my website. Um, Instagram is obviously popular as well because Instagram and Facebook are certainly well connected. Um, and Zoom. I mean, everybody seems to use Zoom now. So when I say, I'd like to get on a webinar call in a client meeting, and I might be with somebody that's over 50, they're absolutely familiar with Zoom. So I think it's pretty cool. Social media has become, I think, very user friendly to those over 50. And for me, I definitely take advantage of it, with regards to spreading my message. Webinars as well.
Uh,
So I do a lot of communication uh, to my clientele into the marketplace on Zoom through webinars, and I think that it's one of the most powerful tools. And I'm a big fan of Zoom.
hmm. Now, for someone who's uninitiated, right, who is somewhere on the cusp of 50, 55, they're looking up to getting, yeah, crossing that bridge. How would you say that what is possibly the first thing that they should be looking at?
Well, it's interesting. I look back on, I am the demographic. So a lot of what I've done in my life and the changes that I've made are really a result of the lessons that I've learned in watching others do it better. And
Yeah,
so, when I was in financial services, I had absolutely no insight into what I'm talking about today.
right.
I didn't think there was anything to think about, to worry about, to plan. And so, when I look at, and so I tell a lot of my friends, the one thing you need to be doing is thinking about your life 5 to 10 years from now and whether or not what you're doing now is going to support you as you get older. So, again, if you see that your friends are beginning to move away, or they've begun to retire, or or maybe your kids are getting older and they're going to eventually move out of the house,
Mhm.
you don't want to face that empty nest syndrome and that whole "what do I do now" type of a scenario. You want to already be thinking about, what am I going to do? Maybe your professional life is totally secure, but your personal life now, it's just going to be you and your partner, or maybe you alone. Think about what your next steps are to take care of you, to keep yourself as strong and vibrant as you were before those circumstances changed.
Mhm.
And so, I think that the earlier that we talk about and think about those major life events, the better the plan can be. You're less reactive, you're more proactive. And if you don't like whatever you're doing, you can have time to make a change.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
that's my advice to folks that are younger. And it's advice to my younger self, quite frankly.
Now let's go a little more young, somebody in their 20s or okay, early 30s. What's one mistake that you did which could have changed the current scenario for you?
Well, I think, I put on my financial services hat and I think about what was on my mind when I was really young, and it was, paying my student debt and, supporting myself day to day to day, being able to buy myself lunch and pay for the train and pay that car
Yeah.
payment, what have you. And so I was living in the moment. And I think folks that are younger are doing a much better job and are much better aware of their finances. They're much more aware of the idea of investments and retirement planning. I think more so than many of us were, 20, 30 years ago, in my experience. Um, there's obviously people on either side of that.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, making sure that getting old is expensive. It
Mhm.
just is. So when you plan ahead and you save a little bit at a time, that little bit at a time is going to compound, and it doesn't have to be, a lot of money. We've learned that. And
Yeah.
I think young folks have really gotten really smart about that.
Mhm.
And I think too, for me, I was of that generation where, buying a house and having things was a significant milestone in terms of success. And I think the one thing that I really admire about generations, coming after us, and this is similar to us getting, over 60, experiences are really important. And I think younger folks really understand that life experiences are very, very important, and making sure that you're experiencing the world around you um, is super important. And I know for me, I was a major workaholic, so I did not leave my office,
Mhm.
and I thought that was the end all be all. And now I'm really happy with the idea that, we understand better that, having a balanced life is so much healthier for you.
Yeah.
It's a much better outcome. And yeah.
So now I want to talk about a little about the idea of aging gracefully. Now, something that I've heard of on different platforms, there are a lot of people, specifically, we talk about it when there's some talk of some actor or actress and how they've aged gracefully. I don't know how can we convert the discussion to a common man or common person perspective. What would you say to that about the idea of aging gracefully? How do you take that?
Well, it's interesting. Again, I think um, I'll give you a scenario of a conversation that I had with a podcast I was on recently talking about aging. When she goes overseas, and she's in her 60s, when she goes overseas, she has no problem telling people how old she is.
Hmm.
She really feels the level of respect and the level of acknowledgement for her accomplishments.
Hmm.
She says, but in the United States, Laurel, and as accomplished as this woman is, in the United States, she does not tell people her age. And I think that aging gracefully, I love the fact that people in the public eye are beginning to put themselves forth saying, hey, I've got gray hair. I'm not 40 anymore. And I'm going to appreciate what's happening to me, but I'm going to take the very best care I can of myself, but I'm not going to be what I'm not.
Yeah.
And I think that gives us permission
Mhm.
to say that age in the United States at any age is beautiful.
Mhm.
And that, again, I encourage people to evaluate where you are right now and put a plan in place to make sure that you're aging as healthy as you possibly can, you're eating as well as you possibly can, that you are getting out there and connecting, that you do feel like you have a purpose, even if it's a small, it
Yeah.
doesn't have to be a big purpose. It can be a little purpose every day.
Mhm.
But at the end of the day, I love the fact that we're getting better at accepting ourselves as we age. Um, I think that businesses have a huge opportunity to acknowledge the demographic over 60 because there is a lot of income and a lot of revenue to be had. There is a lot, the over 60 does control a huge amount of money that could benefit them. But a lot of companies haven't necessarily embraced over 60. They're
Mhm.
still marketing, especially in the United States, to folks, under 50. And so that's another area that I think is an opportunity is, cater to and be that consultative salesperson to someone over 60 and make sure you understand what they specifically want. Don't put them in a box. Don't make assumptions about them just because they may have a few gray hairs. They may want that red car, they may not want that SUV.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, there's an opportunity to
Yeah.
embrace this demographic as a pretty viable, marketing opportunity.
Now, there was an ongoing debate. I don't know where, if it's died down or not, about increasing the working age, right? Beyond 60. Now, people are living longer, they are living more healthier lives post 60. And there is also a surge in people who are going out into the industry post 60 in some form of the other, trying to get some work or just trying to be active. What's your take on this discussion itself? I mean, you're also getting there, running a business.
Yeah, I think, what I do see is there is still probably some work to do around accepting folks who are getting older. There is that idea that that having a younger, less expensive, or maybe there's more energy in someone who's younger. They're more apt to learn new things. And I say that um, for companies that embrace folks, you know, based on their capabilities, based on their, skills and proven ability to learn, I think that, you're a viable employee no matter what age.
Hmm.
I had people working for me in their 60s, in their 70s.
Hmm.
Um, but it's up to us to maintain
Yeah.
our ability to be able to keep up that pace.
Right.
And I certainly understand that I really believe we have some work to do in order, especially in the United States, to make sure that we are looking at people not just at their age, but what they're capable of. My husband is in his mid 60s, and he was just hired by a very prominent um, trucking company
Hmm.
to upgrade their infrastructure. And he's as busy as he's ever been. And
Yeah.
I really appreciated the company because he's also told me that many of the people on his team are in their 60s. So
Hmm.
it's a company that really understands and embraces capabilities versus age. Now, I will say on the downside, yes, as we get older, we may face chronic issues, we
Yeah.
may face more health problems. And so companies are taking a chance
Mm.
that, we may be out of the office more than we were when we were in our 20s and 30s. But at the end of the day, I think that honestly, given that there's going to be more of us over 65 in a couple of years than under 18, I think it's important for companies to begin to embrace how do we deal with this and embrace folks over 50 because there's going to be more of us than anybody else. So,
How are you seeing the demographic? I mean, you're seeing the demographic change as you grow. So how is the young generation reacting to this change? Like they have a lot more people to take care of. The economy has to change. There will be a drastic shift towards more focus on healthcare and stuff like that. Now,
oh, yeah, I could go on and on and on about that. There's definitely headwinds in the United States, worldwide, as
yeah,
far as the pressures on the aging population on healthcare,
yeah,
the fact that more younger folks are in caregiving roles while taking care of their own families while working full time. And so the pressure there, and by the way, they're spending, upwards of $10,000 a year out of their own pockets to take care of or to deal with the situation of caregiving. And there's really, honestly, right now, there's not a lot being done. And I talk about this relative to Y2K. So when Y2K was
mm,
coming along, it was a worldwide effort between governments and businesses to prepare us all so that Y2K, just another day, I still have that t-shirt.
yeah,
We're not doing the same thing in approaching aging and all of the headwinds that are coming at us, the expense of healthcare, the fact that, yes, we are living longer, but are we living better? The last 12
healthier.
years of our lives typically are not as we're not as healthy as we'd like to be. And so, we're living longer because of pharma. We're living longer for all sorts of reasons, but we're not necessarily living better. So, I believe we haven't really dealt with that. There's a lot of legislation being introduced in the United States on like, a one-off, dealing with housing, which is very expensive. A lot of us can't afford to move into assisted living communities.
Hmm.
So we have to stay at home and then pay for care. So
Yeah.
all of these issues, we don't necessarily have a strategy like we did with Y2K to deal with the worldwide pressures of aging. And that's another one of my mantles that I've taken on is really be that voice of those that are getting older because we do have 5 or 6 major issues going on that aren't being dealt with on a global basis.
And now, random question here. You've been doing such wonderful work working with the aging population. How many people have you affected, touched points, and how many people's lives have you impacted in the work that you've done in recent
Well,
times?
so we have a couple hundred clients that we've been working with, and in my healthcare world, I had over 200 caregivers, and we dealt with a couple thousand clients.
Mhm.
So I feel as though I've gotten a really good momentum going. There's definitely inertia with regards to the messages that we're sharing, and I feel that for those that are plugged into what we're doing, it's really made an impact on the quality of their life. And it's also created camaraderie. So, you don't feel alone
Yeah.
when you start sharing what I'm doing.
Hmm.
Uh, One of, clients will say, I don't feel alone anymore. I feel like,
Yeah.
I just needed to understand and get clarity around a plan. And so it's exciting. I really feel as though I have a purpose every day for sure when I get up.
Yeah. And it's lovely to see that purpose shining on your face. Like you have that grace and you have the idea that you want to help people aging. And then, so before I close, do you want to share some details as to where people can get in touch with you if they want to have?
Absolutely. Thank you. So we are on silversavvy.com, and we're on Facebook, Silver Savvy Age Well. And to reach out to me directly, I am at hello@silversavvy.com. And, we're on Instagram as well. That would be Silver Savvy Age Well. And we're on YouTube, Silver Savvy Age Well as well. So we're all over the place.
Right. Thank you so much for joining in, Laura.
Thank
So
you.
it was great having this conversation. I mean, it's a different perspective because, yeah, usually the people that I have are somewhere around 40 or even younger. Some people are my age now. This is a different perspective that I had, and I'm sure the audience will also appreciate it and love to hear more about it. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
To the audience, if you like the conversation, do leave a like. If you have something to ask, do leave a comment. Or if you want to add to the conversation, you can also leave a comment. And don't forget to subscribe before you close. Thank you so much for joining.